Remember that they're changing my voice. This video is vital in understanding Revelation. I'll try to keep it short. I've said many times in my videos that Revelation is about a transformation of the world into hell. Before I read this clip from John 2, this section rather, I want you to remember that there's more than one way to interpret it, but they all must be interpreted within the boundaries of righteousness and justice. Okay? So what is, and truth, obviously, what is actually occurring. So some people interpret it as the devil, that Jesus is the devil. And that is not the righteous and just interpretation, but it sheds light on what their plan is, what their plan is for the world. Okay. So John 2, it's the third day at a wedding in Cana in Galilee. And there's wordplay there, right? Can Alpha. Cana, right? Cain Alpha. They're saying, can the children of Cain be the patriarchal line? Obviously, the answer is no. Galilee, right? Gay, Lil, like little, Gay Lai Lee. Okay, of course, you have Bruce Lee. So you see things, in popular culture, they tend to line up, right? The United Nations and so on and so forth. They keep the kind of occult pattern that they're Satanists and fooling everyone. It's part of Babylon's system, part of their self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will, okay, which is, injected into God's greater plan in terms of the devil's part, okay. When the wine, so again, it's the third day. Remember, he died on the third day he rose. The number 3 is a recurring number in the Bible, okay. It's at a wedding, okay. And this is key because of Psalm 19, right? The bridegroom, the champion, the top martial arts, right? The wedding in Revelation, okay? John himself explaining things in terms of him, watching over the bride until the bridegroom returns, okay? And the parable of the wedding banquet, okay? Those who aren't prepared, those who don't have righteous deeds are not allowed into the banquet, okay? When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, they have no more wine. So his mother said to him, they don't have any more wine. Woman, why do you involve me? Jesus replied, my hour has not yet come. So he's saying, why are you involving me in this day 3 thing where you want me to turn water into the wine that's going to be used, is supposed to be used in a valid communion, a valid mass, if you will, which is in the church that it never has been. But why are you involving me in this? Okay? My hour has not yet come, right? This is not the time to turn water into wine. It's not the time to turn, the water of God into the blood that was shed for you. That's how he describes it in the New Testament, that this wine you drink is the blood that was shed for you. And we're going to connect this to Revelation 16 momentarily. Bear with me. His mother said to the servant, do whatever he tells you. Okay, without him even being convinced, she just says to him right away, she says, oh, do whatever he tells you. Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kinds used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. And again, there's a lot of figurative stuff, a lot of comparisons. It's not a coincidence they're made out of stone, right? The stone the builder rejected when the temples that the Jews relied on instead of the temple of the Messiah, okay, the spiritual temple and otherwise, okay, is destroyed. When he predicts its destruction, he says, not one stone will be left on another. And the stone the builder rejected has become the chief cornerstone. The Lord has done this, and it is marvelous in our eyes, right? The rock, God as the rock that you depend on, the firm ground, okay? The foundational stone, the foundation of righteousness and justice. So there stood vessels that were valid, righteous, and justice vessels, 6 stone water jars. Okay, and again, 666, the number of the beast. So if you interpret it incorrectly, you've accepted the boundaries of the world and the patriarchal lines of the world, the governing class, the hermits, the people who aren't in the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. So the boundaries of rejecting the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. And we know that from Genesis 10, and Moses studied martial arts, among other things, to become a man of action and powerful action and speech, as Stephen says in Acts about Moses, right? He studied warfare in Egypt, then he wages a military campaign, splits the Red Sea, takes them out of Egypt, and they start clashing with the tribes and so on and so forth. Okay. And then eventually culminates into, people taking over, right? Moses' brother Aaron, the people take over. You see Joshua, Jericho, eventually all the way down to David and Goliath and so on and so forth. Okay, taking battles against the Philistines and Jebusites and what have you. Okay, so nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kinds used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. All these numbers are symbolic, but it's not so important that you understand these numbers or you decipher this. Okay, we'll get to that later. Let me just finish this here. Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water, so they filled them to the brim, right? They're filled full, right? Holy water that's going to be turned into wine, which symbolizes the blood that was shed by the righteous. That's why he said that, why do you involve me? My hour has not yet come, right? He's going to give up his bread and his wine, right? His body and his blood, okay, to try to save people's souls back then. And that'll be their one chance for the Messiah to die for them as such. Okay, and now at this point in time is up. So Cain did not scramble to do the right thing. So he never had a chance, right? So say, for example, long ago, I had come, okay, someone like me, and they had a daughter and not a son. And then somebody from the line of Cain had scrambled to do the right thing and actually was found worthy. That did not happen. That will not happen. It ends after I die. Okay? Anyway, Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water, so they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. Okay, so now to draw some out. Remember, Moses' name means to draw out, because he was drawn out of water. Okay? The servant, I believe it was, of a royal family member, a female royal family member, I think it might have been the queen or whoever it was, a female royal family, Pharaoh's sister or something, okay, fished him out of the Nile, I believe it was, right? One way or another, he was drawn out of water and brought into the royal household of Egypt, where he learned Royal African Falcon martial arts, is the idea. However, at that time, the Egyptians did not do Royal African Falcon martial arts. They were illegitimate pharaohs, and that's a story for another day. The Bible, again, is by Baal. It's not by God. Okay. So, okay, then he told them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. Okay, the bridegroom is then taken to the side by the master of the banquet, who didn't know where the wine had come from. And he said to him, verse 10, and said, everyone brings out the cheap wine first, and the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much wine to drink, but you have saved the best till now. This symbolizes that after all the righteous are gone, last of all will be the Messiah. Okay, last of all, he sent his son, okay, who will also accept being screened out for righteousness' sake. However, you don't have to, the people who are right, are following the script or whatever you want to call it, the churches and all these fanatics and these cultists and Satanists and all these rich people and the corporations that are linked to these super rich churches like the Mormons and the Catholics and so on and so forth, okay, basically all the churches that are allowed, they don't have to screen me out. That is just one interpretation of it. Okay, save the best till now. One way or another, the fact that I'm going to be the last is enough, and I'm going to stand firm for God, right? So they didn't have to actually persecute me. That was one of the dumbest decisions, matter of fact, the dumbest decision in human history. Because one way or another, their offspring are going to hell, and they're going to hell. But they made it far worse. Okay, because God is a God of justice. If he does not forsake the righteous, how much will he not forsake justice for his son? Okay, now let's look at Zechariah 9. Okay, I'm going to go through this whole chapter later, but let me just get to the key parts. Zechariah 9:14. Then the Lord will appear over them. His arrow will flash like lightning. The sovereign Lord will sound the trumpet. He will march in the storms of the south, and the Lord Almighty will shield them. They will destroy and overcome with slingstones. They will drink and roar as with wine. They will be full like a bowl used for sprinkling the corners of the altar. Okay, so they will, okay, again, they will destroy and overcome with slingstones. They will drink and roar as with wine. Okay, so the wine represents the roaring spirit of God. Okay, he marches in the storms of the south. Right, it says his arrow will flash like lightning. Right, the lightning is not literal when it's being discussed in Revelation. Okay, it's not literal Okay, the arrow is not literal. God does not appear and shoot a bow and arrow. Okay, nor is the storm literal. The storm is figurative speaking. So this war spirit will march, right? Even their pagan god of martial arts, Mars, okay, is where we get the word martial arts. In fact, is also where we get the word march, the month, and to march into battle. And the Lord Almighty will shield them. They will destroy and overcome with sling stones. Again, not literal, but the root and offspring of David. Again, I've said it many times, the warrior spirit of David, right? He used a sling and stones, one stone in particular, to strike down Goliath. The stone the builders have rejected, right? The martial arts spirit of God has become the chief cornerstone. Okay? And the top martial artist, that's me, the chief cornerstone. The Lord has done this and is marvelous in our eyes, right? Psalm 118. Anyway, they will drink and roar as with wine. They will be full like a bowl used for sprinkling the corners of the altar. So we see water was turned into wine in John 2, rather. In Zechariah 9, verse 14 and 15, we see that the righteous will roar like wine. And we see in Isaiah 42:13, it says the Lord will march out. He will, raise the battle cry, stir up his zeal like a warrior, raise the battle cry like a mighty warrior. Okay, he will cry out, he will roar, so to speak. That's Isaiah 42:13. Now we see that we go down to Jeremiah 51:55. The Lord will destroy Babylon. He will silence their noisy din. Waves of enemies will rage like great waters. The roar of their voices will resound. So waves of enemies, right? The water, waves of enemies will rage like great waters. So the water is raging in Jeremiah 51:55. Okay, the righteous are roaring like wine in Zechariah 9:14 through 15. And we see in 1 Samuel 17 that after Goliath got struck down by David and he cut off his head with his own sword, the Israelites surged forward, right? A surge, okay, a surge like a surge of light and a surge of water, right? A surge forward, a surge of the Spirit of God. You see how these things are referring to the martial arts spirit. Okay, it's referring to God's holy, divine martial arts spirit that Nimrod was the first to have, and Nimrod was before Abraham, and he founded the region that Abraham was a part of. So Nimrod founded Babylon, right? He set up his centers there. He founded it. Therefore, God is the stone through Nimrod. God and Nimrod are like the foundation, okay, of God's spirit entering into, God's war spirit specifically, entering into the world, okay? Now, before I run out of time, this is part of why it's a Royal African Falcon martial art order, not an Israelite order, okay? And it's in pieces throughout the Bible. Amos 9:7. Are you not the same as the Israelites? Are you not the same as the Cushites unto me, O children of Israel? Why did he say the Cushites? Because Ham begot Cush, Cush begot Nimrod, Nimrod founded Babylon. It's a Royal African Falcon martial art order, and they looked up to the Cushites. The proverbial saying was, like Nimrod, a son of Cush, right? A mighty hunter, a mighty warrior before the Lord. Okay, so the first angel pours out his bowl on the land. Ugly festering sores break out. The people who had the mark of the beast, right? Except the mark of the beast, the limits, what have you, because it's a war spirit versus it's the spirit of rebellion versus the war spirit of God. Okay, the second angel poured out his bowl on the sea, and it turned into blood like that of a dead person, and everything in the sea died. So they don't have a warrior spirit, right? They have a sissy beta spirit, technology, mere flesh-based brute force, not this profound, intense warrior spirit of God that I have. Part of why they couldn't beat me in my martial art challenge, and they resorted to cheating instead, because they're deceivers, Satanists, and not in the Spirit of God. The third angel poured out his bowl on the rivers and springs of water, and they became blood. Okay. Then I heard the angel in charge of the waters say, "You are just in these judgments, Holy One, you who are and who were, for they have shed the blood of your holy people and your prophets, and you have given them blood to drink as they deserve." And I heard the altar respond, "Yes, Lord God, Almighty, true and just are your judgments." Okay, so again, these are bowls. And in Zechariah 9, it said that there's a bowl, okay, for sprinkling the altars. Okay, they will be full like a bowl used for sprinkling the corners of the altar, right? Altar, to change. The play on words for changing. When you go to the altar, you come into the Spirit of God and you feel more holy, and the Spirit comes into you, and so on and so forth, right? So they're changing the world to make it even less holy, even more defiled. It's being brought down. That's why people are acting so wicked these days. And it's not ever going to rise again. Isaiah 24, Isaiah 34, Isaiah 66. Thank you.